some frustrating sequence of events against Kansas the other night, just being at the goal line, 3 opportunities to score, couldn't do it. Just kind of, what was your recollection of those events from being upstairs, and how frustrating was that?
Yeah, I mean, very frustrating. Really felt for the kids, our players. An opportunity again to play really good football in a critical situation. We didn't get it done. So, yeah, really bummed for those guys. You go back and look at it, it's just everything that we got to do. We got to play our best football when our best football is needed, consistency. And, it starts with practice. Really, those situations don't always come up in practice, but it's weird how things carry over when you can sustain high energy and execution in practice the whole week and then typically do well in those situations. Not to say that we had a bad week of practice by any means, just got to be a little bit more sharp so when we do get in those situations, we got firm feet and we can execute.
Is that a point of emphasis this week, just again,
Sure.
with blocking and offensive line? Where did you see things kind of not come together on those plays?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple details that we need to do a better job coaching, and it really comes down to the base fundamentals, pad level, coaching up sneak a little bit better, not necessarily just on the offensive line. Everyone wants to say it's easy to look and say you can't get it in from the one in a critical situation. Obviously, that's on the line. It's not necessarily the case. It's everybody. It's how we're running the football. It's the detail of understanding the techniques that we're getting from the defense and how we should attack those. So those are things that, as a young team and we're learning and growing, I definitely see us being a whole lot better in that situation moving forward.
I asked Scott about this yesterday, but how frustrating has it been to the injuries at quarterback? You don't have consistency, so to speak. Week in and week out, knowing who's going to be the starter, and you're having someone who's maybe banged up. How frustrating has that been to try to build some of that consistency on the practice field?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. Yeah, I think it's fair to say you get frustrated when you get a rhythm and then your rhythm gets thrown off. But that's the game of football. We're not unique versus anyone else in the country in relationship to trying to build a continuity with all the guys. It's just the difference for us is a little bit newer, so we're trying to find a rhythm. Doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. Yes, you're frustrated, but what are you going to do about it? It's the next man up mentality, and that's that needs to be the mindset, not just for the quarterback position. It's for everybody. Obviously, when the quarterback's the one that always touches the football, it's a little bit more highlighted. So, yeah, I mean, I'm more encouraged than discouraged just about everything. When you look and pull up the tape, it's 11 guys playing their balls off for, what sometimes, previous games, 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters. This game in particular, really the first half. And, you kind of scratch your head and try and figure out, okay, what are the things that we can do as a staff to put these guys in good situations so we kind of give them a layup, give them a win, something by design. But ultimately, it's all of us trying to find a way when things get really hot and heavy and it's hard and there's layers of ambiguity from what the defense has given us, just find a way to make it work. And a lot of times that's fast reactions. Okay, maybe this is an unscouted look. They've never shown this before. We need to be able to execute our plays, whatever the scheme is in those situations. And those are the teams that win a lot of football games, are the ones that can do that.
Coach Frost made a heavy emphasis on playing all 4 quarters. Obviously, against Kansas, the 3rd quarter was one to forget. What went wrong from your perspective?
We came out flat in the second half. I don't necessarily attribute it to one single entity. I think there's multiple layers to that question. They did a good job on defense in particular. They adjusted. They had a good second half adjustment, and we got into a situation we had a 3rd and medium, and we didn't convert. Very similar to the Kansas State game. It was how we started, and we didn't convert on a pretty simple play on 3rd and medium. And then just the reality of it, human nature, you're off the field for about 20 minutes of real time. Right, not 20 minutes on the clock, but 20 minutes of real time. And we have to do a better job of being able to sustain, no matter what time it is at night, no matter what period it is in the game, we have to find ways to keep that level of energy up. And we put a big highlight on that. So that's going to be the challenge to the offense moving forward. 4 quarters of football, not 2.5, not 3. It's always going to come down to the last whistle, and it does come back to practice. How does practice rep number 92 look versus reps 1 and 2? And that's the emphasis.
A lot of talk has been about the goal line plays, but you got the ball back on offense, and Cam was leading the team down the field. Then there were a series of mispasses. What greater composure did you need to see there? What would you have liked to see down the stretch?
Yeah, I thought Cam came in and he handled himself very well. Obviously, that's a strain for a quarterback that doesn't get all the reps with the ones. There's multiple layers to that. point blank period, we have to be better, and that's not just Cam, that's all the offense. Protection's got to be cleaner. The coaches, we got to be a little bit better. There's a couple things that they did that challenged our protection a little bit, so it just kind of got us off schedule and rhythm. Ultimately, the things we have to be better at is we need to get in those situations. We got to simulate those situations in practice, and it really comes down to what I said earlier. You get into the latter half of practice, and that's when we really have to push through. A lot of times, just having firm feet, bright eyes, and being ready to go. It's not necessarily a play call. It's not necessarily one individual, but that's how things happen. I mean, it's playing football at full speed all the time, and you're generally going to make it work.
Coach Dylan Wade was back available for this Kansas game, which Kyle Fox had his time as well. Just how would you evaluate the kind of performance this past week, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think they would tell you that it wasn't winning football for all 4 quarters. There's some good plays. Certainly, there were some good plays, and I want to highlight some of the early runs. Very physical, did what we needed to do at that position, and then we got a little bit later in the game, and you started to see things fall off. Some of it's fundamental, some of it's technique, some of it's the adjustment that they needed to make versus the defense's adjustment. And I think our guys are ready to play. They're bright-eyed. Can we sustain that for 4 quarters? That's the challenge.
Throughout the 5 games, you guys have consistently rotated the guards in pairs. At this stage, is it simply about keeping guys fresh, or is it performance-based?
Both, right? We're trying to find a rhythm, but at the same time, we got guys that can play inside, and we certainly want to have the freshest guy. And you have to be mindful of those things later in the game where, hey, maybe I could get a fresher guy in, but we have continuity and rhythm going to avoid things like the false starts, to avoid things like maybe just the adjustment that's going to be made because the guy that's been out there has seen what the defense is doing, in particular the techniques up front. So it's both. We want to play a number of guys so we stay fresh, but we also have what we believe is some really good players, and we need to find a way to get continuity with not just 5, but 6 and 7. And that's just playing more ball.
And in that position, and all in the interior, how does Dante Corleone challenge you guys? What are you seeing on tape?
Yeah, great. I mean, this guy's a very good player. He's been around that program for a while. It seems to me that they've centered the way that they run their scheme based around him and his ability to take care of the middle of the football field up front. And he's going to be a challenge this week. He's a load. Sounds like he's been dinged up, and it looks like we're going to get a healthy version of him, which we challenge the offensive line good. That's what we want. We want to get one of the better players in this league and get his best shot.
Few more. Coach, there were obviously some times we kind of struggled on 3rd down last game. Just kind of how do you attack that issue going into the week, and just kind of how do you improve on 3rd down going into the game with Cincinnati?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 layers. One, it's try to get into some better stuff, so it's an easier completion, it's a better scheme. Sometimes that's a little bit of a Rolodex when you're looking at the defensive breakdown of what they do, and generally defensive coaches are pretty mindful too of their tendencies, so they change their tendencies. Just straining to find an answer for all the coverages that we might get and the protections. Part 2, we need to be better in practice, executing the simplest stuff. Sometimes that's going to be, hey, just making sure we're getting our depth on our route or making sure the ball's out on time in practice. So we're harping on our guys in relationship to those things, and then firming up the protection. And it's not always just the fundamentals. It's not just the offensive line. It's also schematically putting our guys into a better position and turning the protection in the right direction. So those are going to be the 3 things to highlight. But, yeah, certainly want to see some more progress made in that area.
Between Miles Montgomery and Jay Nixon, obviously, there's a pop every single time Jay Nixon gets the ball. How important is the rushing offense going to be being on, especially with the rotating board? Feels like quarterbacks, feels like when quarterbacks get injured, during the game, and just how important is that? Essentially, the question is how important is that running offense going to be when you have 2 guys that can really make a pop in the backfield?
Yeah, it's important. The running back position is playing consistently good. Particular Miles, he makes some plays that, hey, that's not a great play, and he'll turn it into a positive. And then obviously Nixon being the home run hitter, he's obviously got good speed. So we got to continue to strain to find ways to highlight those guys. Sometimes it's with some creativity, sometimes just doing the base stuff, doing the boring stuff, being willing to do that for 4 quarters of football. But you're exactly right. When you got a run game, that takes a lot of pressure off all the other areas that we mentioned. And really, to get back to the 3rd down, the other layer to that is try to stay out of 3rd and long the best you can. And a good way to do that is encouraging the running backs to stay consistent. If there's a run that needs to be a dirty run and getting 3 yards is a whole lot better than being 2nd 11.
We spoke to Wade and Charles yesterday. He had a big game. He was on the field. Seemed like most of the game, had 3 big catches. For a true freshman, what's been your perspective of Wade and how he's kind of embraced the challenge and kind of turned himself to a major contributor?
Yeah, I love watching Waden's growth, and as things go for freshmen, it's not all. There's peaks and valleys, and Waden certainly had some of his challenges, but it's always encouraging. He's got a smile on his face every day. He's a guy that just gets consistently better every single day, and it was cool to see him get the opportunity to go out there and perform. Now, the number of snaps that he got is probably more than we probably want him out there, but when you're at this point in the season, there's going to have to be a guy that steps up, and sometimes it's not necessarily getting the ball and throw it to you every play, but it's being able to run block and doing all those things. He probably went back and watched the tape with Coach Becton and saw, okay, man, there's a whole lot of things that I can be better at, and I love his attitude, and I enjoy being around that dude.
Thanks. Coach, first of all, just kind of reflect on the other night against Kansas and the overall defensive effort. I mean, you did hold them, well under their averages on the season, and one of those touchdowns obviously was a short field. Just how would you evaluate how your defense performed against a really good offense?
I mean, certainly there were some positives. I mean, the thing to highlight, just the fight. One of the things we talked to the guys about is, the fight always matters. Sometimes you don't get the outcome that you want, but you can't dismiss it and say, well, that effort or that. Again, there's no better word. It's fight. I mean, that somehow that you dismiss it because you didn't win the football game. And so I was really, really proud of that and pleased with that because that's the only way you're going to get the outcome. I was really disappointed from a takeaway standpoint. That is a turning point in that football game. They got one, we didn't. And so that's part of the messaging as well, as those aren't extra credit to come up with some. We have 2 losses on the year. We lost the turnover battle in both of them. That's not by chance. So we talk about it so much. I think it was in this room maybe a week ago with what's one of the critical factors. I'll say takeaways every single week. And we say takeaways because we don't look at it from a luck standpoint. And so we got to find a way to get hands on footballs. I mean, and so we'll be, quite disappointed in that. And you can work in all those things, but we got to fight for that football. But no, really pleased with the guys' fight, and I guess it should go without saying that the football team should fight every single Saturday or Sunday in the NFL and stuff like that. But you don't take that for granted.
Alex, you guys are going to face a Cincinnati offensive line that has only given up 1 sack this season. They lead the country in that. How do you guys get pressure up front to try to make it difficult for Sorsby to maybe make some of the plays that he's made over the last couple of weeks? Yeah, and that's a combination of the obviously the ability, physicality, scheme, coaching from an offensive line standpoint. Obviously personnel in the front, experienced group, and then a quarterback that can get himself out of some trouble as well. So that you get that mix now. It makes it very difficult to say, okay, let's attack this deficiency or this area from an offensive standpoint or a particular player, in fact. So it will be a major challenge. One of the things that we've faced, it'll be 3 weeks in a row, when you see a mobile quarterback with experience, that changes the world defensively because it changes the world offensively. A young quarterback with his athleticism, sometimes they can do you a favor because they're going to scramble when they're not supposed to. And not always make that right decision in terms of should I scramble to throw or scramble to run and all those things. When you get a quarterback with mobility, it can feel like they got Teflon on because they can get themselves out of jail. It can also, from a confidence standpoint, help the guys that are in front of them, whether it's backs or tight ends, as well as the offensive line. And with experience comes kind of that, knowing when to direct the ball downfield, knowing when you got the time to wait on something to come open, and then the time when to step up and time when to abort and scramble and scramble with the intention to run. So that's a very difficult task defensively. Sometimes you like to say, okay, well let's do the same plan we did last week, but it's a different offense and a different style from a scramble standpoint. So it's certainly not that simple. So be a major challenge for us. And the big thing is it takes all 11 to get a sack. It takes the appropriate coverage. It takes the appropriate reaction if it does turn into some semblance of a scramble, and then just effort and physicality on the defensive front as well to give ourselves a chance, because you got to find ways to win some of those. And
you can't let them, win the down when otherwise defensively you should have some advantages, whether it's coverage-wise or front-wise. They make it very difficult.
Following the game on Saturday, Coach Frost mentioned the team needed to take advantage of opportunities, especially when up early. On the opposing team, specifically mentioned having the lead going to half with getting the ball, and then Kansas coming down and scoring, and that was like giving up opportunity. How important is it for you? And you were emphasizing to the defense to capitalize on those opportunities, even when up big.
Yeah, I think one of those things that we talk to the guys about is we say there's three types of games. There's the games that are the constant back and forth, so you assume when you say that it's even somehow, some way. It's the other version is you have a significant lead, say 2 scores is kind of how we define that. Or conversely, you have a significant deficit, which we describe as 2 scores. And so you can't be surprised by any one of those 3 scenarios. And what you can't do is there's one of those scenarios you really, really like, and that's when you're up 2 scores. The other ones you may have result in some feelings that those feelings have the tendency to get in the way and turn into distraction. Now, same thing when you're up, is you got to make sure that you remind yourself that there's nothing more insignificant than the score at halftime. And we tell the guys, the only thing that it might be a little bit less significant the score at the end of the third quarter, because there was only 1 quarter of the game that you can win it. So to scoreboard watch early, that's a fan's reaction. We got to make sure that we don't have that. I mean, and there's another down. One of the things, several times over the course of it could be a scenario where it's a review or something like that. We got more ball to play. Whatever the scenario is, it may be a scenario we like. It may be one where they're backed up, or one where we're backed up, and it's a sudden change in those things. But football requires us to go take the field and get a stop, and so those moments just have a tendency not to announce themselves, and so it really comes down to just from a consistency standpoint. Played good defense. You got to be able to repeat the things that you've done well and do so with the appropriate level of effort. And so we got to find a way when we have momentum. We got to find ways to keep it. And one of the ways you do it, circling back from a takeaway standpoint, is those are the times where you get a chance to steal a possession that's critical. And then on the flip side, if momentum is not on your side, it's a great opportunity to kind of flip it that way. And so those are things we've missed the last 2 weeks.
What's the impact of losing Forrest Lockett?
Yeah, I mean, I think just from a size standpoint, anytime in your defensive front, like everybody, you only have so many guys that have that a skill set and the size to match, and so other guys have to step up, and roles will be enhanced for some of the other guys, which can be a real positive, and they got to take advantage of those things. Obviously, I heard for Horace, you work the tail off, and something happens, and help them more football ahead of them. But anyway, it's a frustration, and as with all positions and all injuries, it just the game doesn't wait for you to get healthy, and someone's got to go take advantage of the opportunities. And so we'll kind of mix that up a little bit and give several guys an opportunity to kind of see what their role can be in his absence.
Piggybacking off that, who are some of those other players that can stand to step up with Lockett?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about, some of it is guys that have played that you're going to have to play more significant snaps. You won't have the ability to rotate maybe as much as you otherwise would. But Rodney Laura's the guys have been playing a little bit. RJ's, obviously John and the defensive front, all those guys, the snap count goes up. Jefferson's a guy that's played a little bit for us. It's going to have to play a little bit more. And some guys that maybe haven't seen the field yet that could find their way in there based on their week of preparation and those things. So, no, it might just be, as much as anything, just rep counts, go up. It's a position you'd love to rotate, but you got to make sure you get appropriate guys. There can't be a drop off to just throw guys in the game type of thing. So, yeah, the verdict's still out.
You've had 5 straight first quarter shutouts this season. What's working in the preparation, the build up, and then in the execution to be able to get off to such a good start consistently?
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a great answer and one I could just stand on, and because if you did, you do it in the second quarter too, type of thing, right? So I do give the guys credit from a preparation standpoint. Obviously, the coaching staff preparing the guys, and in the end, the guys executing at a fairly high level over the course of the. If you didn't do it, you'd be losing your mind about not having a fast start. Fast start, and so I don't want to minimize it by any stretch of the imagination. The difficulty as you're coming out there is, offenses, we call it opening script a lot of times, where you may be seeing things you haven't practiced. And so one of the things we do emphasize with the guys, the ability to problem solve is critical, especially in the early portions of a game, where there's they have a tendency to kind of look at your tendencies, and then they're trying to attack you in certain ways, or see how you're going to maybe either handle personnel groupings or formations. And so you're really trying hard defensively to not give an offense an advantage in those scenarios. And you got to problem solve. You got to trust your rules. We try to throw enough at them over the course of the week. We go against the offense where we don't know what plays they're going to run, and we run our calls and stuff like that to try to put them in those scenarios. But in the end, they got to handle it. And the other thing we talk to the guys about is we're not on the field with you, and so making sure that they feel that they have the confidence, whether it's a call, a check, whatever it is, to the week you're trying to be right. If they make a call and we don't like it, we tell them, no, we need to do this. On the field on Saturday, other than between series, it's really all preferences on a coaching point. So if they're in the moment and they make a communication and they adjust a certain way, they line up 2 yards wider than we want them to, or something like that. It's about getting it right, not being right. And there's a difference between the two. The week and then spring ball and fall camp is about, okay, it's now you can't lose detail in that, obviously. It's not just do whatever you want, and that's not what I'm implying. But just I think there's a confidence in them that they have the ability to problem solve and handle their business.
In a similar vein, Cincinnati's around a plus 70 offensively in the first quarter. So what trends are you seeing them succeed? They got out to a 17-0 lead against Iowa State in the first row last week. So what trends are you seeing them successfully early in the game?
Yeah, and I think it's probably on this side of it, what I'm speaking to is that opening script where they've been practicing something all week, very specific to us. Unfortunately, they don't tell us what that is, so it's going to be a major challenge, and we know that. And it's easy to say fast start. What does that mean? They're trying to get 1-2, clearly. And there's a lot of production that way. And so making sure that we got our cleats in the grass, and we're communicating and prepared for those things that we haven't practiced. And in those moments, you got to make sure that you default to rules, and obviously you got to have rules in place that you can default to. No, that's a major challenge. I mean, the minute you say that, you start shaking a little bit as a coach, because you better come out the gates hot.
At Cincinnati, they're averaging about 40 points a game. So what's scary, Kenny, when you turn on that film, and what do they do well?
Yeah, and unfortunately, from a defensive standpoint, they do everything well. And so, again, the ability to get the explosive through the air, to consistently run the football, good backs, good strong backs. I know Tyree from time at Wisconsin. He's a hard guy to bring down, and I got a lot of respect for him. And then you add the quarterback run game element of things, and then the RPO element of things, so you can't wholesale in terms of tackling backs or the quarterback, because there's a route that you got to defend, and then the play action series off of that to create some guys open, and so you can't have extras everywhere, and so it makes it a real challenge defensively. Their stats are their stats, and so it's going to be another one for us that got to keep things in front of us and fight to get some takeaways.
Now, you're from the Columbus area, right? Grove City, which isn't too far from Cincinnati. Is it maybe a little bit more special for you going somewhere close to home? You have family that maybe is going to be there supporting you on Saturday?
Yeah, no family this weekend, but no, I told you guys I'm a Cincinnati Reds guy. I got my MLB package. That's the only team I follow. I got a 1990s Wheaties box that's unopened. That's my prized possession. It's about worth like $10 on eBay, but it's worth a lot to me. It's made a lot of moves with me. It's faded, but and I wouldn't eat it, but yeah, I do love the Reds. But no, I've never played a game there, and I've obviously been to the city quite a bit. I've been to the stadium. It's a really cool atmosphere and those things, and it's a program I've had a lot of respect for a long time.
Who's your all-time favorite Red?
Oh, that's tough. My favorite growing up was Paul O'Neill. Everybody knows him as a Yankee. I remember him as a Red. But, in 1990, I was 10 years old, and I won the World Series wire to wire, and I'm talking Eric Davis, Chris Sabo, Jack Armstrong was their ace, Jose Rio. I can name a lot of those. So, yeah, I'm a Reds guy.
Unfortunately, I don't have a Reds question.
Then I have no answer for it.
Starting the season, linebackers Kelly Lawson, Lucas Carter obviously started off strong. It seems like Cole Kozlowski has carved out a significant role on the defense. Talk about the impact that he's made and how he's improved during past few weeks.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to rotate at that position. If you have the guys to do it, you want to do it. Some of it also is, when somebody gets banged up and stuff like that, you're trying to, find the appropriate rep counts. So Kelly's had some injuries as well, and so trying to, piece together, kind of what's the magic number for each guy to get the best out of them, while also keeping health in mind. But no, we'll see all those guys play. Obviously it's a position. Just when we're talking offensively, you're talking run game, quarterback run game, RPO, and you're talking about play action. With those linebackers, they don't get a play off, and really oftentimes within a play, they have to transition their brains and body between each layers of that. And so that's a tall order. So making sure that we can rotate that position is a luxury. Cole's a guy that has made a lot of tackles in his career. He probably is disappointed when he doesn't get 14 or 15 a game, because that's kind of been his world in his previous stop. And so just pleased to have a few guys that warrant those reps and guys that we can get productive reps out of.
Through 5 games, Cincinnati's leading receiver, Caleb Goody, averages over 22 yards per reception. How important is it to be able to limit the big plays and just tie your offense?
Yeah, and the right word, like you said, is limit. I mean, to think that the coverage exists where you can just eliminate is probably naive. I mean, you'd love to get out of the game and have a different story, but and really across the board as you go through the receiving core, that number really stands out. Sometimes you don't notice. You notice the big number, but then you see the numbers on other guys, and you're sitting there like, well, there's a consistent pattern forming here, and their ability to get the ball downfield, make guys miss, and scheme some guys open as well. And so all those layers to this thing is really, really difficult. And mixing coverages, is the right idea. That's it always is. Not camping out in one thing, but it makes you, really, respect the fact that any deficiencies that you have can be exploited and obviously turn to explosive real quick. And so a lot of respect for the receiving core.
The Bearcats have taken advantage of some crucial big play moments over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, you talk about the deficiency on their offense, but what can your unit do to kind of avoid some of those big plays that they really kind of bring to win?
Yeah, I think one is eye control. Eye control is assuming that the communication was right at the snap of the football, and then that gets 11 guys on the same page. But then making sure that we see exactly what we need to see from a run game standpoint, the keys that are attached to it, and then from a pass game standpoint as well. If it's zone coverage, your eyes are supposed to be on the quarterback, and you're staring at man, you're going to miss some opportunities. Conversely, if you're in man coverage and you're staring at the quarterback, we're going to have the issues. And then combine that with a quarterback that scrambles and extends plays is one of the things we talk to the guys about. Is the better the coverage, the longer the play, and you can't attach frustration to that. That means you're doing a good job. Like a 4 to 6 second play turns into a 6 or 8 second play, and we're playing coverage, then the alarms can't go off. It's got to be something that we embrace, and obviously we got to look it through the lens. It's buying more time for the defensive front to get home. And then, the other thing to note is a ball that's caught in front of you is down on contact would be the ideal scenario. A ball that's caught in front of you that breaks means we didn't knock it down, and so those are ones that you gotta eliminate or limit, is a better way to say it, as best as you can. And then if you're so concerned with the pass game, then they've found ways to explode in the run game too. So no, it's a real one. One of the better offenses we'll face.
One more. Back on turnovers, what has to change in order for your defense to create turnovers?
Yeah, and that's why we say takeaways. We say we're physically taking the ball away from the offense. 2 weeks ago in Kansas State, we had two other caused fumbles. We didn't get on those. So one of it is getting the ball out, finding those opportunities. Sometimes quarterbacks in space, it's a great opportunity to do that. You got to have the population around the football to, one, get it out, two, to get on it. The errant throw, obviously the quarterback gets a little bit of a vote in that, in terms of where he's directing the football. And if he's disciplined, again, he's talking about more experienced quarterbacks, they have a tendency to have a little bit more discipline about them and not force throws in that. And so, you're talking about the percentage of plays that it's available to you. If you go through 1,000 rep season, just for even numbers, and you're saying, by and large, if you you get 24 takeaways in the season, you average 9 wins. With 24 takeaways over the course of 1,000 reps, you're talking about you're only getting a takeaway a very, very small portion of the time, and the impact, even those 2.4 snaps on average that you're going to have a chance to get a takeaway over that many reps is a good reminder too that you're not going to get a return on investment every single time. So we still got to punch the ball. You still got to strip. You still got to populate in that area. If you're losing a pass rush, you got to be willing to throw a hand up. They're not always going to hit your hand, but if you don't put a hand up and attempt to disrupt the throw, you're not going to get that tip. And then the same thing, obviously, on the back end is, making sure that you're tight enough in coverage and mans to put yourself in a situation that you can get a hand on the football. Maybe you don't come down with it, maybe someone else does. And then the zone coverage concept is making sure that you're keying the quarterback, you're breaking when the ball's thrown, and that's when you get some collisions and some of those things, and you can traverse a certain distance to try to get 2 hands on the football yourself. So I would simply mention that. It starts with want to. They don't magically come your way. And sometimes they do, and we'll take those also. But generally speaking, you got to create them. And so populating to the football and being physical has a tendency to be the right answer.